So we'll start with a vagal release. So we'll just bring the hands to the back of the head. Okay, try and keep your skull centered, looking forward, not turning your head towards your elbow, and just looking up towards your right elbow. If you feel, I always feel when I look, I can see as well that I've slightly turned. If you do turn your head, you can always hold your chin, and that way you're going to keep your skull in the right position. But the beauty of lifting the elbows up is you get that stretch in your diaphragm. So it gives you sort of a double release in a sense. So you're just looking for the yawn, the sigh, the swallow. Sometimes it's just the feeling of a yawn at the back of the throat. So that's the beginning of it. So there's mine. So just stay there. I'm going to stay there just for the 30 seconds, just to give you a bit more time. Doesn't hurt anyway, just to stay in this. It's only 30 seconds. And just focus on the breath. So it's about 30 seconds. So bring your eyes back into center and close your eyes for a moment, just so the brain resets, and then looking over to the left elbow and try not to move the skull. Try and feel a little bit taller in your spine, so you feel the diaphragm stretching as you lengthen up through the spine. So we hold a lot of tension there. Just focus on the breath, on the saliva in the mouth. So sometimes you'll just notice that there's suddenly more saliva, and that's all part of the reset through the vagal system. And we're just going to hold just a little bit longer, 30 seconds. I've got my swallow there, which was good. It's funny how you might get one reaction on one side and a different reaction when you look the other way. So I had a yawn to the right and a swallow to the left. And then bring your eyes back into center. Close your eyes for a moment, and then just bring the arms back down. Just move your neck. You should feel a little bit different. You should feel just aware of your surroundings a bit more, maybe a bit more aware of your blood flow into your neck and your head. So we'll do the suboccipital release, and if you just think about the spine at the back of the skull, and you've got the rim of the skull, you've got muscles that run along the rim of the skull, horizontal. You've got muscles that run down the side of the spine, vertical, and then you've got a diagonal band that connects the two. It goes from the vertical to the horizontal, and it's usually that diagonal band of suboccipital muscles that is the most effective. So we'll start with just 2 thumbs, and we're just rubbing at the back of the skull. So you can feel there's a broad band of muscle along the rim of the skull and going under it. So they're the horizontal ones, and there's triggers there. There's triggers in all of these. Towards the mastoid process, and I can feel I'm really tender as I come towards the mastoid process behind the ears. If you come inwards and you go up and down the sides of your spine, your cervical spine, they're the vertical ones. And you're not coming down that far, you're coming down about 3 centimeters, and then come down 3 centimeters, and then go diagonally up towards your mastoid process again. It's that diagonal band where you get the most release. So if you find the middle of the triangle, the indentation, and sort of go above and push down and outwards into the diagonal band, you'll feel it's quite tender in there. So with your thumbs, you're just going to do a little bit of up and down, a little bit of rubbing, maybe slightly tuck your chin to get a little bit more length in those muscles. And really, it's going to be both sides. Nice way to do this is lying in bed at night with your head on a pillow, so you don't have to be arms overhead too long. I've got a swallow there, so still we're working on the vagal system as well. So if you wanted to, for time we can do both. If you wanted to, you could just cross your fingers, second finger over first finger, and you could just press into that diagonal band. Use the top finger for a little bit of pressure. The pain is a lot higher when you use that more directed pressure. And you could try just one side at a time. Even 20 seconds here is going to make a huge difference. So these muscles are very influential in head posture and cervical alignment and blood flow to the brain and the vagal system. So they get very shortened and tightened, and then they cause compression, and then that brings you into an altered state. It can affect your balance, it can affect your spatial awareness, you know, your eyesight, your everything. So it's really important to keep an eye. And, you know, I just pressed for probably 60 seconds and I can just feel now that that tenderness has dissipated and it's gone. So now I'm changing to the other side. So diagonal band going from about 3 centimeters down to the mastoid process at the back of the ear. You go into the indentation and then you're just pulling down into that medial, that inner border of that muscle, and just find anything that's tender. I was definitely worse on the left side. I can feel there's a difference. So if there is a difference, you've got to think about what you're doing habitually every day at work, in your everyday life, to figure out why one side would be more tightened than the other, and then try and balance that as best you can. So like I say, if you've got a lot of time, you could do all 3 bands rather than just the diagonal. So this is oblique, it's an oblique capitis muscle. Oblique just means, you know, at an angle. So if you want to, you could come back to the ones under the skull and just do a rub along the bottom of the skull. If you find anything that's tender, just press. So for me, a little bit further out, just in front of or just before the mastoid process. And that's probably to do with the sternocleidomastoid as well in the front of the neck, where it comes into the skull. So I'm just using my thumbs, and thumbs are really strong. So you can really add quite a bit of pressure through the thumbs here. And any of the neck releases, even 20 seconds is going to make a huge difference. So you can do this as you're working in the day and just give yourself a quick sort of balance and then carry on, and that stops things getting too bad. Okay, so we'll just leave it at that. Roll the shoulders, just move your head. So what you should feel is your neck feels more aligned, you've got better blood flow to the brain, more alert and more engaged. So get your 2 balls in a sock. And I thought today we'd start with hamstrings. I'm usually pretty bad with hamstrings. I leave them to the end, and they're always in need of attention. So I'm going to do my left leg, and I'm going to sort of sit sort of cowboy style. And I'm going to start just in front. So I've got a space about as wide as my thumb and first finger, and just put the 2 balls in front of the sit bones on that side of the sit bone. And so you're really in the origin, you're in the beginning of the hamstrings. And just start by sitting and just see how it feels. If you're really tight, you know, this is usually where you're going to feel it most, at the pelvis. And then you could start to add a little bit of a rock. Make sure when you're rocking, it's sort of belly button forward. You're not rounding your back and straightening your back. You don't want to bring in the spine when it's not necessary. So just think belly button moving towards knee. And that feels quite nice, that pressure. And then you could also, if you want to go a bit stronger, you could try extending the leg and flexing. Try that on its own. So like I say, if you're a 9 out of 10 in tightness, you've got to be, you know, you've got to do this carefully and mindfully. If that feels okay, as you take your leg into extended, you could take your belly button towards your big toe and then come back into upright. So you're rocking. So when the belly button moves forward, it's an anterior pelvic tilt, which means you're moving forwards at the belly button. You're keeping a fairly neutral spine. So that means your spine is not having to flex. And if you've got tight hamstrings, that could send your back into crisis if you're rounding and leaning forward, thinking more chest to thigh. That's not going to work with a tight back. So now just bring the ball down. So, you know, it's all going to be a little bit painful whether your hamstrings are tight or not. If your hamstrings are really struggling with this, start with just rocking forward and back and see how that feels. Change the balls to something softer. So the ball that you choose is pretty vital as well. And then you maybe just do the leg extension on its own. Figure out where you are in that scale of 10, and then maybe belly button to big toe. So the hamstrings are three muscles. You've got one in the middle, and then you've got wide at the pelvis coming into the back of the knee. So it looks like a V. And so you've got them either side as well. So it's going to get a little bit more painful maybe as you get towards the knee. So you're coming down again. So we're in the outer two where the V comes down into the knee. So you've got to find there's some areas of tenderness through here. So hamstring tightness is usually a reaction to something being out of balance. And you need to keep an eye on your hamstrings. I'm coming down again. So in the middle band, so in the middle and towards the knees, you've got triggers at the sit bone, you've got triggers in the middle and then around either side of the knee as well. So now we're coming into the zone that's got the active triggers. You might need to adjust yourself on the chair. I've got a nice high stool, which makes it a little bit easier. If you're on a short chair, you might find it a little bit more difficult. You could do it on a table or a bench outside, you know, if you've got a bench outside in the garden. So for me, it's definitely getting a little bit more uncomfortable as I come down. And for me, it's the inside rather than the outside of the leg, but that's just me. So if you were to divide the back of your legs into 4 zones coming down, from the knee up to that first zone, you avoid that area. You're not coming into the back of the knee because there can be lots of blood vessels, there could be varicose veins, there could be cysts, things going on in there. So, you know, like the groin, like the armpit, these are areas that you avoid when you're doing trigger point work. And the triggers are usually where the tendon comes from a joint and then branches out into the muscle. It's right at the beginning of the muscle. So either at the pelvis or at the knee. So you don't need to actually go into the knee. It's not going to make much difference. If you wanted to do the knee, you would do it with your hands. You'd do it with your fingers and you would just gently work the back of the knee with the fingers. And that would be as strong as you would go into. So I'm about 3 fingers up, 4 fingers up from the back of the knee, and that's as low as I'm going to go. And I can feel there's quite a few triggers on the inside of my knee, a few on the outside, but especially on the inside. So for me, that's where the issues are. So I'm just leaning forward, but you could add the lean forward as you extend the leg if you want to make it a little bit more active. I'm staying in the forward position. I'm just swinging the leg now. So once you've figured out where your active triggers are, you could take the balls out and you could turn them into upright and you could put them in that area and you could just sort of roll your leg across the ball and you could just put your hands on the top of your thigh, add a little bit of pressure, and you could be a little bit more targeted. So say it's the outside of your knee in that upper quarter, then put the 2 balls one above each other and then just really work into the muscle there. And you know, in this position, in a seated position, you've got a lot of control about how much weight you're using so that you don't make it unbearable. So for me, it's more on the inside of my knee. And I'm just getting in there. Whoops, mine just sprung out. That's why the sock is handy, because you can grab the end of the sock. Oh, I found a really nasty one. So for me, I'm in the middle now, at the back of my leg, in the second quarter up from the knee. There's some nasty ones here. So this is the middle one. So this is your biceps, your femoris. I'm making a circle with my foot and I'm letting my leg move, and it's sort of doing a circular massage over the ball. So I don't have to use my upper body too much. So I stop. So if if you do a job where you're sitting a lot, like Laura, you could actually get 2 balls and you could just sit on them for 10 minutes every now and again through the day, in front of the sit bones, and just you'll forget they're there after a while, and that will stop your hamstrings tightening up in the first place. So that's quite a good preventative, because usually sitting is not going to be great for the hamstrings. So coming into sort of cowboy position, side sit on the chair, open them out so that you're either side of that middle band of muscle, and you're just in front of your sit bones. And just get used to sitting on them, because that's quite challenging at first until the muscle relaxes. So hamstrings and quads, they do act as stabilizing muscles if you're weak in the pelvis, and then they get short and tight and they cause all sorts of problems. So it's usually a reaction to bad posture and weak core. So once you get used to this sitting on them, you could try belly button moving towards your knee. So you're keeping yourself in neutral spine. Actually feels really nice. I mean, you could easily spend, like quads, you could spend 5 minutes here and not do anything else, and it would be really nice for your pelvis and your back. So if that feels okay, stop the movement of the upper body and just extend your leg and pull your toes up towards your knee. So you're coming into flexion, and that's going to really tighten up the superficial back line, all the muscles in the back of the leg. And then when you're sure about how that feels, maybe move your belly button forward towards your big toe, no rounding in the spine, and bringing the whole of the superficial back line. So that is even muscles in the spine, even muscles in the neck and up to the head. So once you've done the upper part, you can come down a few centimeters. You decide by how it feels. Start with just the pressure, belly button to knee. So, if it's, I'm definitely on a tighter leg, you can usually feel one leg would be more tight than the other. And then you can just start to just do the extending leg. If that feels okay, belly button moving to big toe. So as always, if you've got issues in the pelvis, if you've got issues in the hips, in the spine, one leg is going to be slightly worse than the other, and you just need to be mindful as you're doing it and coming down again. So any reaction, like I went really quickly into that and I just felt a little bit of cramp, so that was my brain saying not sure you should do that unless you use your abs a little bit and just ease into it. So belly button to knee, and then maybe just the extending leg, and then maybe belly button to big toe. So for me on this side, so I'm just telling you what I'm feeling so you think about it for yourself. My back doesn't really like the extending leg and moving forward on this side because it's tighter. So I'm just going to do the extending leg, and I'm going to put my hands on the edge of the chair. I'm just going to lean my belly button forward, but I'm not going to move. So I don't think that one size fits all. You've got to really, really think about what you're doing and how it feels. I'm coming down again. Think about where it feels uncomfortable. So the other side was the inner part. This one for me is the outer part of the hamstrings. One in the middle, one on the outer side of the leg, one on the inside of the leg. So you've got those 3 muscles all working together. Very strong muscles. You can feel by the tension in the muscle how fibrous they are, how hard they work. And down again. So once you get into the middle of the back of the leg, you're really starting to get into the territory of the triggers. You can put your hand on top of your thigh. You could push down a little bit if you want to increase the pressure. Coming down again. So if you find a nasty trigger, just stay there, give it a bit more time. You could use ischemic pressure by just pressing up from the top of the thigh. So I found one just on the inside midway down, and so I'm just pressing on my thigh. I'm not even moving. You're trying to be about a 6 or a 7 out of 10. You can do a little bit of a circle with your foot, so that becomes sort of a mashing circular release. So coming down again. So anywhere that you feel tenderness, just stay there, give it a bit more attention. So if you think of your 4 zones at the back of your thigh, starting at the knee, coming up a quarter way where you've got the line between zone 1 and zone 2, that is the lowest you'll go to with the ball. Or alternatively, you could just measure with your hand, 4 fingers from the back of the knee. That's going to, where your little finger is, that's pretty much the same sort of distance as well. So once you've done that, you could take the ball out and you could put them in an upright position. Go back to wherever it was tender. So for me, it was in zone 2. And just sort of go from right to left and just massage across the 3 heads of your hamstrings. And if you find area of tenderness, just stay there and you can just do your foot circles or leg swings. Again, pretty tight here. Take some deep breaths. Try and stay in that good state of mind where you're not allowing yourself to be pushed into pain. So just focusing on the breath will bring you down maybe from an 8 to a 6 if you can just focus on the breathing, what you're thinking. Crazy cat has just arrived. Yours has to make an entrance. You can't just come in quietly. I know. Okay, so that is hamstrings. So we'll take the chair away. And I'll just change the camera angle. So I've got the floor in. And grab yourself a pillow. So the next ones we're going to do, I'll just take my jumper off, is hip flexors. So we've done hamstrings. We're doing the big leg muscles. So you could do it with the roller, but how about we try with the 2 balls in the sock? If that's too painful, then you can switch to your roller as an alternative. So it depends what hardness of ball you've got. So just side lying, 2 balls fairly close together, and you're going to lie on the ball and just see, so anything in that side of the pelvis. So you could do this either way. You could have 1 ball at the front, 1 ball at the back, and roll from one to the other. Or you could have the 2 balls stacked on top of each other, and you could be rolling over. So whichever seems best for you, play around with that and just see how it feels. Maybe side lying and you're just rolling your torso. So TFL at the front, you've got glute minimus in the center, and you've got glute medius at the back. So anywhere in those 3 muscles, they're all going to need some attention. Just breathe. It's great. And like always with these big muscles, they start to relax, and then you suddenly feel that you're going deeper, and it starts to become a little bit more painful, a little bit more tender. So if you wanted to, you would straighten the legs, and you could just a little bit more tension in those muscles, and it's going to be a little bit more painful, but it will be a quicker release as well. So just try that. Hello, Charlie. Don't sit with the dog. So just rolling front, middle, back. You can also sort of go up and down, a little bit of moving from the crest of the pelvis. down to, you know, where the leg bone comes into the pelvis. Your greater trochanter is that hard bump at the side. So anywhere above the greater trochanter, you're going to be in deep muscle as well. So I'm going to change my focus to just slightly more to the front. So I'm pulling one of my balls in the sock forward, and I'm just going to bring my top knee into bent, and I'm just going to stay on that front. Is sort of, you know, there's the side of the pelvis. We're just sort of halfway between front and the side, right in that deep muscle, which is your TFL. So if you're not sure about TFL, you just imagine you're putting your hands in your jeans pocket. That's where your TFL is. And if you sort of move your big toe upwards and outwards, you can feel the muscle bunching up as you turn your foot out. So once you find that muscle, just really get into it and just do a little bit of scrubbing. So this really is the tightest place in the body. And so it's always, you know, an important place to look at. And you can do things to increase that by lifting and lowering the bottom foot, or making circles with the foot. So you're activating the muscles. So that's a torsional release like we were doing last week. And again, all these things just speed up the release in the triggers. So this is a muscle group that you should do little and often, and then it never gets to be a 9 or a 10 out of 10. You still want to keep it around about 6 if possible, so it doesn't get chronically tight and affect your posture. So I'm going back to scrubbing again. So as the muscle softens, then you can really get in there. These muscles can really handle a lot of force. They're big, strong muscles. They're very fibrous. So the gentle massage isn't really going to do as much as being a little bit more in there. So bring your knees together. Just carefully come up. Change ends. Same thing on the side. So whatever you did on the other side, repeat again. So for me, it was one at the front and one at the back. Different side, might be a different story. And for me, it is. So you're just assessing. You're rolling from the front of the pelvis through the middle to the back. And just give all of that a little bit of attention. So like I said, if the ball is the wrong hardness, if you don't feel it's working, then just change this to a roller and just see which you prefer. You wanted to, you could straighten the legs, get a little bit more active in the muscles. Take some deep breaths. If it's painful, you can always put the pillow under the rib cage and just give yourself a little bit of lift so that you're not using too much force. You can go up and down. You're going up and down the bone of the pelvis from the greater trochanter to the rim of the pelvis. If you find something that's particularly active, you could just stay there. So for me, glute minimus, which is the muscle above the greater trochanter. So if you've got the bump at the top of the leg, it's almost like a hat or a fan around the top of the muscle. So anything around the top of the greater trochanter is glute minimus. If you go slightly further back, you're into glute medius. Glute minimus can cause a lot of problems. So then maybe you just position that front ball into TFL, where your hands would go into your jeans pocket, and bring your top knee forward so you put your weight into the ball, and then you could just stay still, or you could do a little bit of scrubbing. So for me, definitely everything on this side is a little bit more unhappy. So a scrub is forward and back. A mash is sort of a circular movement. So the circular movement sort of does the peripheral area, getting all the blood and the lymph out of the muscles so that there can be an exchange of fluid, which can then help those triggers to desensitize and turn off. You find your actual trigger point, you could just stay there, and you could do the lift and lower of the foot. You can do the circles, that brings in your mashing again. So all of these muscles, because they're big leg muscles and glutes, you could easily spend 5 minutes in each of these just on their own, and you would find that was time well spent. So coming into quads using the roller. So we've done the back of the thighs, we've done the hip flexors or some of them, and now we're coming into quads. You could do them with the ball, but that would be quite painful. So we're going to do it a little bit more quickly and with the roller. So it's always nice to divide the quads into 4 zones from the front of the pelvis to the just above the kneecap. So if you start in the upper zone, just below the pubic bone, and just with your elbows under your shoulders, your fingers interlaced, you're just doing a push-pull with your toes, and you pull your belly button to your spine so that your spine is not dropping towards the floor. Your abs and your core, your powerhouse is active. So you could do a single leg lift. So if you roll onto the pubic bone, you've got trigger points there from your 6-pack muscles, your rectus abdominis. And then if you come down to the line between zone 1 and zone 2, that's where, so about a quarter of the way down from the pelvis in the middle, that's where your major upper trigger is for your main hip flexors, your rectus femoris. So if you just stay on that line between zone 1 and 2 and just lift the feet or keep them lifted, or you could do circles with the feet. So you could do one leg circle, other leg circle. You'll start to feel the same thing as before. The muscle starts to relax. You can feel it's quite tender in the deep muscle here. So just give yourself a little bit of time here. Give the muscles time to relax. The triggers can be all the way down the middle of the front of the leg, but these are just the universal triggers here that we're pointing out. So it's quite nice if you can get to it, to lifting both feet. You do a little bit of, just tuck your tail under and just do a little bit of a pelvic lift. Not too big, don't make your shoulders work too hard, but it's enough to activate your abs. So it's a nice way, you know, if you did this, if you did 100 of these little hip hikes, that's like doing 100 crunches, and just really building good strength into your core, into your chest muscles, your shoulders, your upper back. It doesn't need to be big. Even these little partial movements are really effective. So I've done about 20 and I'm starting to feel my abs now. So if I did 100 of these, my abs would be like really, really tired at the end, in a good way. I'm going to go for 50. I've done my crunches for today. And I'm really working into the quads at the same time. So that's a nice, I can start to feel my chest and shoulders here as well. I'm going to do 10 more. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So there's my crunches. So now I'm pulling down and I'm working the second zone and towards the the line of the third zone. So, you know, there'll be triggers all through here. There won't be probably the master triggers, but they'll still be fairly active. And then if you can find the zone between, the line between zone 3 and zone 4, which is about a quarter of the way up from the kneecap, that's your other master trigger, your universal trigger. So the same thing, lift the feet, belly button to spine. If you get shoulders get a bit tired, you could just stop for a minute. You could push back into kneeling, give yourself a rest, and then come back into this. And again, you could lift both feet and you could do your second 50 crunches here, your little tiny pelvic tucks. So just whatever seems right for you. So maybe you start with 10 and then you build to 20, 30. So keep the belly button pulling into the spine so the back is nicely stable. About 30, so I'm going to keep going. So partials, when you do these small movements, are really effective. You work the muscles in a small range. 10 more, 10 and 9 and 8 and 7 and 6 and 5 and 4, 3, 2, 1, and gently push back into kneeling. So that was our ab work for today. So just stretch the roller forward and just, you know, gently reach and come back. Let your head relax between your upper arms. So you're going to feel this in lots of different places. You might be feeling it in your chest and shoulders. You might be feeling it in your hips, in your glutes. You might be feeling it in your low back. Just wherever's tight, you're going to feel the most stretch. So I would say pretty much all of those for me. It's a lovely, lovely movement. Just make sure the neck is relaxed. And then pull the roller in towards your knees so there's not too much tension in the arms, not too much downward pressure, and just very gently bounce your shoulders and your breastbone up and down. Make sure that feels nice. Make sure it's comfortable. You're working in a safe range. So 60% range, 60% effort. You're using the bounce just to open up some tight muscles, some tight fascia. And then tuck your tailbone under and roll back up. So what we'll do now is we'll come back onto the roller and we'll just do some really long strokes from above the kneecap to the pubic bone and just rinse the quads. So rinsing is where you push the blood and the lymph through the muscle so that it can refill. So we'll do about 20 strokes, and maybe you could do a little bit of a half turn and do the side of the leg a little bit. Maybe 3 or 4 strokes on the side, and then up and down, and then 3 or 4 strokes on the other side. So that outer quadricep is often one of the most painful places in the body. So it's always a good idea to keep an eye on that. And the roller is probably the nicest way to get in there. And then just push back into kneeling and just sitting into your heels. Just give yourself a good stretch, take a breath. Roll up through. So we'll grab the balls in the sock. And we'll put the balls, 2 balls on one side under your bottom. So we'll start at the back of the pelvis, just under the rim of the pelvis. And we'll just put the left hand under the left side of the pelvis so that we level up through the pelvis. And we'll just take our feet to hip space. We'll just roll our knees from right to left. So it's a little bit like the spiral line release, but we're using the pressure of the ball. And just a comfortable roll. We're really not even thinking about trying to reach the floor. we're just working in about a 60% range. So we're going really from trigger point 2 to trigger point 3 in the glute medius area. You could try moving the balls in a bit, and that would be trigger point 1 and 2. So trigger point 1 is on the SI joint, trigger point 2 is in the middle, and trigger point 3 is as far out as you can go without the ball popping out. So you can move the ball right to left and just figure out what feels the most tender. And then maybe after you've done that, you're going to lift your bottom up, take the ball over to the other side. I'm going to do both sides so that I don't run out of time. And we're going to put our right arm and hand under the back of the pelvis. So we're nice and level through the pelvis, and we go back into rolling the knees. So again, for me, the right side glutes, the left side glutes are much more painful than the right side. Things change every day, but I can feel there's quite a lot of tenderness on this side. So we've really focused on the big muscles of the body today. We've been doing the leg muscles, the glutes, the hip flexors. So all the main offenders, really. So if you move inwards towards your SI joint, where the sacrum is, trigger point 1, trigger point 2. If you move slightly outwards, you're going to be on the middle one, trigger point 2, and the trigger point 3, which is just about as far out as you can go on the back of the pelvis before the ball would pop out at the side. You'll know by how tender it is if you're in the right place. So the knees are rolling. It's quite a big move. If that feels too much, you could just let one knee roll rather than both. So there's less movement in the pelvis. You can modify. So now lift the bottom up, take the balls out, go to the right side and go onto the SI joint. You want one ball near the top of the SI joint and the other ball in the middle of your sacrum. So you're on the PSIS, the high point at the back of the pelvis, at the top of the SI joint, and you're on trigger point 1 for piriformis and for glute medius. So put your other arm under the left side of your pelvis, so your pelvis is level, and go back to either rolling both knees or bring the feet together and just roll the knee that's on the side that the ball is. So if your pelvis doesn't like the big movement of both knees, just do a single knee. So this middle one, this lower ball, is a trigger point area for 2 muscle groups. So piriformis and glute maximus. So it's quite an active area. Take some deep breaths. I don't know, but I think if I did a survey and asked everybody, they'd say that the glute releases are maybe their favorites. So it's a big muscle, it gets really tight, the big muscles, they get tight and they just really need to be released. So think about where the balls are and then lift your bottom up and just roll them over to the other side. So you're at the top of the SI joint, the PSIS, you're in the middle of the sacrum on the SI joint. Put your right arm under the right side of your pelvis so you're fairly level in the pelvis. You can bring your feet together, single knee falling out, or you can go feet hip space and do the big knee roll. So just see what seems best for you. Just breathe. So you want to be here at least 60 seconds. Maybe you do it a bit longer if you had an issue. So lift your bottom up, take the ball away. So now we're going to go find, you've got your leg bone coming up, you've got your greater trochanter, which is that big bump, hard bone at the side of your pelvis. You're going to be just inside of that. And the other ball just slightly down on a diagonal from there. So you're really into your rotators. So piriformis is the upper ball, just on the inside of your leg bone, and the one below it is one of your rotators. So just move that lower ball around until you find anything that feels a little bit painful. Put your left arm under your pelvis, and I would just do a single, bring your feet together, just do a single knee fall out for this one. So you've got your piriformis, but then you've got 5 smaller muscles below there. And some of those smaller muscles can get really locked up and tight. So you're just sort of between the sit bone and the greater trochanter, and just see if anything feels a little bit tender in here. Just breathe. And then from here, you could go above the sit bone and have one on have the ball sort of side to side, one towards your tailbone, one towards your leg bone, and above the sit bone. So this is your trigger points for glute maximus. And this one, you could go back to the roll again, put the left arm under the pelvis. You could go back to the big leg roll. If that doesn't feel comfortable, then just do the single fall out. And just when the cat makes that noise, he's usually caught something. It's probably a lizard or something. Okay, so then take the ball over to the other side. So you've got one ball, the outer ball, just on the inside of the greater trochanter, and the other ball somewhere down on the diagonal between the greater trochanter and the sit bone. So, and put your right arm under your pelvis. So this one, you definitely want your feet together and just the knee on the same side. I'll take my leg out of the way. The knee on the other side just falling out. So those smaller rotators can get quite painful. You don't want too big a movement here. You just want to find something that's comfortable. That's it. You could also do pelvic tucks. That's another alternative. I quite like the fallout because you move into pressure and then you come out of it. So you get a little bit of a break. You're moving into it and then you're moving out of it. So from here, we took the 2 balls down, either side, just above the sit bone on that side, one towards the tailbone, one towards the leg bone, and you're just finding the trigger points for glute maximus, hand under the opposite side, and you're just doing that single leg fall out, or you could do the knee sway if that's not too painful. And just breathe. Nice deep breaths. So now we've done the release of all the legs and the hips, just grab your band, your elastic band, and you're going to put the feet through the band. You want to do just above your knees. So you do the release work first, and then you do the strength work after you've created that new territory in your body. So I've made it into a ring. You tie a knot at the side, yeah, at a comfortable width. You want the band above your knees, not below. So take it above the knees, and then you're going to just lift your bottom up, put your hands at the front of your pelvis, and you're just going to start by lifting and lowering your pelvis. So think about the up and down of the pelvis. So then as your pelvis goes down, the knees move in. As your pelvis comes up, your knees open wide. So you're bouncing. So the knees are moving in and out. The pelvis is moving up and down. You can get a little bit faster. You want just a reasonable amount of tension in the band, because this one builds, and then I'm starting to get faster and faster. So this is a great way to activate your glutes. So maybe you just slide your pelvis slightly over to the right. That's going to activate your right glute. And then you come back through center. You glide your pelvis slightly over to the left. You come back to center. You do some nice big knee bounces. So you find the knee bounce drops off a bit as you move. So gliding over to the right, come back into center, gliding over to the left, come back into center, big knee bounce. You could try dropping the back of the right side of the pelvis, bouncing, come back to level, dropping the left side of the pelvis. So that again is just changing the way you use your glutes. So again, you could drop the right side of the pelvis, come back to level, drop the left side of the pelvis, come back to level, and then just finish now with big knee bounces. So your bottom starts to feel a little bit fatigued, and then lift your pelvis and roll down through the spine. So you should feel quite fuzzy and quite electrified in your glutes. Take the band away. So the band we'll just finish with now. So just hug your shins, just give your back a little bit of a stretch, bring your head into your knees, take a breath, and then swing up into sitting. So grab your roller, thoracic extension. Okay, so we're going to come to, if you feel with your hands the top of your shoulders, and feel the deep muscle at the back of your shoulders, that's your trapezius. Feel the neck vertebra, and you feel that really big vertebra, which is the first vertebra of your rib cage. You want to be below the level of your shoulders, below that big vertebra, and just link your fingers behind your head, and just lift your bottom and lower your head, lower your bottom and lift your head. So this is really working into your trapezius, that really tight band of muscles at the back of the shoulders. So it really feels nice. Sorry about the cat, he's caught a little skink or a little lizard, so he gets very excited when he's about to kill something, which is a bit gross. Don't work with animals, I'll lock him out next time. So just lift and lower. So if you're really tight at the back of your shoulders, you could just stay in the head down position with the bottom up, and you could just gently move up and down about even ½ centimeter, and just very minutely just work into the deep muscle here. It feels really lovely. Keep your chin slightly tucked so your neck muscles are active, they're not relaxed. So now bring your bottom down to the floor, lift your head, and just do a little bit of a side to side scrub. So we're really about, if I measure with my hands, 1, 2, 3, we're about T4, thoracic 4, and we're going to lift our bottom up, and we're just going to move up and down about 2 centimeters. So we're working between T3 and T4. A little bit into our rhomboids as well. And then you put your bottom on the floor, you do your side to side scrub. So think of 2 centimeters as 2 vertebrae. So if you lift your bottom up, push yourself upwards, or the roller comes down about 2 centimeters, and you're moving up and down through the 2 centimeters. So now we could be on sort of T4, T5. So you're moving through that 2 centimeters, you're flushing or rinsing all the fluid out of the muscles in the spine here and the upper back. And then you get smaller and smaller and smaller until you stop and you bring your bottom down. You do your side to side scrub. So when you're ready, you bring the heels a little bit closer, you lift your bottom up, you go down another 2 centimeters. So now we would be T5, T6. We've got 12 vertebrae in our rib cage. You're only going to go down to about T8 because it starts to feel uncomfortable in that lower range. You're getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Put the bottom down, do your side to side scrub. So then maybe, it depends on how far down you are, bring the feet in, lift the bottom and go down 2 more centimeters. So make sure you've not gone any lower than about 3/4 of the way down your rib cage. And you're just moving up and down in that 2 centimeter range. So if it feels uncomfortable, just go up again, move up a bit. We're pretty good at knowing when we're in the part of the rib cage that isn't strong enough to do this. So you get smaller and smaller and smaller, you put the bottom down, you do your side to side scrub. So if you take your right hand and feel the large vertebra at the top of your rib cage, that big bump at the base of the neck, you're going to stay below that vertebra, and from where you are now, you're going to lift your bottom and you're going to roll all the way up to about T3 or T2. And then roll down 3/4 of the way. So you're just doing these long rinsing strokes, pushing and pulling with your feet. Keep your chin slightly tucked, your neck muscles are active. Excuse me. So now bring your bottom down and put the roller where it feels comfortable for you. So it might be the bottom of your shoulder blades, or it might be sort of in the middle of your shoulder blades. And you're just going to breathe in and look at the ceiling, keep your chin tucked. Breathe out, contract your abs, and lift the head and look through your knees. So there's a little bit of a pull in the neck, but try and make it really minimal and make your abs do the work. So you don't really need to do much more than support your head. As you breathe in and look at the ceiling, feel the stretch in your chest muscles. As you breathe out, feel your abs contract. Breathe in and open. Connect the breath, breathing out and close. Breathe in and open, keep the chin tucked. Breathe out and close. One more. Breathe in and open. Breathe out and close. So just do a little half turn and just scrub around the side of the shoulder blade. So you've got lots of triggers in this area. Make sure your neck is not moving around, your chin is tucked. Come back into center, do a half turn to the other side. Just give yourself a good stretch. Come back into center. Just one more, breathe in and look at the ceiling. Breathe out and close. You should feel there's a really good quality of breath now, and you've really loosened up in the upper back. One more, breathing in, breathing out. Take the hands forward, float the feet, give yourself a little push forward, and just drop your head. Give yourself a moment here, just so the spine and the brain can just assess what you just did, and then slowly coming back up. And you finished. We didn't get through all of it, unfortunately. I always talk too much, but we got through most of it. So well done. Hopefully you feel ready to go on and do some work now.